What's going on, guys? It's Dustin with Family Tree Investing. I just recently came across a video by Brandon Turner from BiggerPockets that I thought was really helpful. And what he discussed was, as a landlord, how you should begin to prepare in light of all the recent events with the coronavirus, with these social distancing requirements, with folks not being able to go to work, and the inevitability that some of your tenants, some of these individuals might not be able to pay rent on time or altogether in some cases. And Brandon hit on 5 points. The first one was making a plan. I thought this was really good. I personally, even owning just a handful of units right now, I haven't even thought about a plan. I keep thinking about, what might I do if a tenant calls me, or if I see that their automatic payment isn't processing. So his first point was have a plan, and I'm going to talk about mine at the second half of this video here. His second one was to be prepared to empathize with your tenants, which I thought was actually a really good point. I mean, everybody, even though they're a tenant, they're a person, right? And everybody runs into issues now and again, and it doesn't help when it's an issue like this where it's really beyond their control. So you need to prepare to put yourself in their shoes and empathize. Number 3, explain to them that rent is still due. Number 4, giving them their options, which again, I'll explain as part of my plan. And number 5, developing a program for an emergency rent deferral. Again, I won't go into the details of his plan. I'll talk about mine right now. Okay, so as far as my plan goes, it's going to start with a letter to all of my tenants. I think that's the easiest way to communicate some of this stuff and really get your thoughts together and on paper and try to be as clear as possible. So, as part of this letter, I'm gonna hit on these points. Number 1, I'm stealing right from Brandon and letting them know that rent is going to be due as usual. This, in my opinion, just helps set the tone and make it clear that if they can pay rent, then it is due as usual. The second point that I'm gonna make is give them some ideas on where they could go if they need assistance with rent, or even go to like a family member if they need it, or a friend. The third point is I use the online software Cozy to process all of my rent. So all of my tenants are set up on there. And one thing is really nice about Cozy is that it's free, and I've never had any pushback because of this. It's free for tenants to hook up their checking account to their software in order for that to automatically withdraw for no fee. Now, Cozy also offers payment over credit card, but almost nobody uses this to my knowledge, because they charge and I just checked this, a 2.75% fee on the transaction. So what that means for a $1,000 rent payment, that tenant is going to pay $27.50, and that is not result in a happy tenant when they have to do that. So they almost always avoid this scenario. But again, as part of this, I am going to let them know that if they need to use a credit card, if they need to, in other words, step 1, they weren't able to pay it, and step 2, they weren't able to find anybody or make arrangements in their lifestyle to pay rent as normal, that the third option would be for them to use a credit card, in which case I am going to cover this 2.75% fee just to make sure they get their rent paid. It's a little money out of my pocket, but I think it mitigates a lot of issues, just making sure that they can get this done. The fourth point is that I normally charge a late fee. So right now, normal rent for all of my tenants, rent's due on the 1st, you get a late fee on the 2nd. I don't have any grace period. So as of writing this letter to my tenants, I'm going to let them know that I'll be putting in a grace period. And we're willing to do what we've talked about is 10 days at this point. So after that, that's when we would, again, try to get a hold of them and see what the issue is. But I think between those measures, that should really help ease our tenants' mind. And then the last point is very similar to what was discussed in that BiggerPockets video, but it is sort of an emergency program, which is if you really cannot pay it on time, find somewhere else to get the money, getting a loan from mom or dad or a relative or a friend, or defer some of those other payments or make arrangements in your budget. If that extension won't help and that ability to pay with a credit card won't help, only then will we talk to tenants and let them know that we will have kind of an emergency backup plan, in which case we will allow them to spread their payments out. And as part of this program, the first question that we're gonna ask is, how much can you pay today? And if that's half the rent, if that's nothing, then okay. Then basically the amount of rent that they're not able to come up with, we're gonna allow them to defer to the next month. So once they defer that, what that's gonna do is trigger those payments to be spread out over a predetermined amount. Right now we're thinking about 6 months, but it could be stretched out all the way to a year if needed. So if a tenant is short, maybe $500, they feel comfortable after discussing with us that they can spread that out over the next 5 months, then each month following that late month, they're gonna be required to pay an extra $100 on the rent until they're caught up. So there's no extra fee or anything like that. It's purely letting them spread their rent out over time. So that is the letter that we are arranging for our tenants right now. Between those things, I think will hopefully ease the minds of our tenants. Let them focus on getting back to work if they're out of work, or finding more hours if they need to find more hours elsewhere. The last thing I should mention is that for all the landlords out there, I think it's really important to also ensure that you've got and are actively finding ways to make sure you have enough reserves. So again, if all of those steps fails and you really don't get your rent due on time, and assuming that the government doesn't step in and make it so you don't have to pay your mortgage for a set period of time, most of you, and I just say this because I plan to, is still pay my mortgage. So I'm actively, considering how I keep stashing some away in some reserves for the possibility, the very real possibility that I'm going to be out, a month of rent in a unit, but I'm still going to have to pay that full mortgage. So there's my takeaways. A lot of it I did get from that video with Brandon Turner, but hey, I think that's why he put that video out to begin with, to help small-time landlords like myself. So I am very grateful. All right, guys, it's Dustin with Family Tree Investing. Hopefully that gives you a little understanding of how we're preparing for the issues and the fallout from this coronavirus. Let me know if you have any questions. Until then, stay healthy, get a plan together. We'll talk to you next time. See ya.
Perfect.